5x5 and live for episode 36.
Oh my God, can you believe that shit?
36. I feel old right now.
Gosh,
This is, yeah,
not
old.
Stop
Old.
it.
Episode.
Don't drag me down with you guys. I swear to God.
Bruce?
Oh, we'll get you a walker. Don't worry. You're killing me, Smalls.
I'm not a witch. I'm your wife.
Shut up, witch.
And what do we do with the witches? Sorry.
Oh, let's not rabbit hole that shit.
Don't.
Sorry. I apologize. All right, here we go.
Because it's in my mouth right now. And it wants to
That's
come
right.
out.
In.
All right, you're the one who instigated this, Glace. You need to take control, start acting like an adult, and get us going on the damn topic.
I can take control and get us going without acting like an adult. Thank you very much.
I know.
Who the hell wants to act like an adult?
Not me.
All right.
Okay, there we go.
Welcome all to the live version of Authors in Chains podcast, episode 36.
36. I think that's like this, that.
36, bag of dicks.
Bag of Dicks, episode 36.
Episode 36. But go ahead.
Yeah, buddy.
Glacia is super excited on our topic today. She has been rabbit
Yes,
holing
she
on and off.
is. Man, she
Dude.
couldn't be stopped.
You have
All
no-
right.
So like we go and we don't have a topic, and then Friday I go, we should really have a topic, and Ray goes, yeah, we really should.
And we
That
do.
was my, we really should. I mean, that
Okay.
was it. We really should, right?
I'm like, okay, fine. So I don't even know where this one came from, but this is sort of touches on something that I might complain about, sort of sidewaysly. Look at me.
You have an attitude about this shit, is what you meant to say.
I do. I get a-
Sidewaysly.
Yeah, sidewaysly.
Okay.
Queen of nominalizations over here.
Okay.
Yeah, I ponder about this quite a bit. Yeah, complain, whatever. The whole pop fic versus literature, the whole writing to the market and what's selling versus writing. I hate to say that. I want to say like versus writing like quality. I mean, you can write to the market and still be writing, very high quality stuff, but I don't know. I'm going to anger a lot of people. I'm sure I'm already angering a lot of people by saying this, but really, I guess what I'm looking to analyze is not necessarily individual people's work. And I don't want to diminish what anybody does.
Okay. Do you want to say what the topic is, or are we going to
Yeah, get on with it. You've already rabbit holed yourself. Let's get the definition. Tell them what this is about.
Writing
Come on.
to market, to buy.
Writing to market. There we go.
Right. Is this at all a good idea? What's the practice like? Why? That sort of thing. So
Give us an example.
I get it.
well, today I went down that rabbit hole. Trying to figure out what the market is in order to write to it, right? So like, with the birth of erotica's popularity, I think that this is something that, you can become hyper aware of very, very easily. With 50 Shades of Grey and,
Okay. Erotica is probably the worst of them all when it comes to, holy moly, that's really popular. I can go write some boning stories and I'll make a bunch of money. It'll be cool.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that it's not necessarily that they're poorly written. And again, I don't want to really denigrate what people are doing, but it's a question. If you are going to write, are you going to choose to analyze the market and then write to it? Or are you going to write for write what you want to write, period, end of story? Whatever that happens to be.
I'm going to write what I want to write and screw you guys.
I'm going
So the pro and the con. Let's go to the pro and the con, because this is interesting. The pro, if you're fortunate, lucky, well placed, is that you can see some commercial success perhaps quicker than if you go only with your creative side, right? Mm-hmm. If you
Yes.
go with your creative side, you feel more pure. You feel cleansed of the money grubbing shit that people do to write to market. But
And this is the unfair thing. If you are just writing because you want to make money, you don't really care about anything else. You just want to make money. You're going to write biographies, you're going to write self-help, or you're going to write erotica, which is kind of unfair to those who write erotica because they want to. So,
Right.
but there are people out there who are just looking to make a buck, so they'll throw a quick erotica book up.
Yeah, whatever happens to be the thing. Yeah. And I mean, like, this is
Correct.
probably the point where Ray and I should kind of like be like, hi, because like we know a bunch of erotica writers, and
We do know quite a few, yeah.
we know a lot of erotica writers, and
That's why I put the caveat: those who want to write versus those who, because I'm not,
very skillful, Ray. Nicely done.
I think that a lot
those group
lot
of people, Felicia, James, but all you guys.
yeah,
I know.
Felicia and James, and and there's some others who we know who write stuff that's sort of on the edge of erotica.
Yes.
And they all did it for different reasons, some as a bet, some as a joke, some because they wanted to, some as a release, whatever. I don't know that any one of those guys actually does this though, this whole writing to market. Now, you talk about pros and cons there in terms of making a quick buck. Nobody makes a quick buck doing this, first off. You do increase your chances of having
Is there such a thing? Yeah.
I don't think so.
Quick buck as a writer. There you go.
Right. Yeah,
It's also a saturated, very saturated market right now. You're going up against a billion other horny people that think if they write a horny novel, it's going to attach to you. Yeah, that's a hard nut to crack. Hard nut to crack. Sorry.
Yeah.
Difficult genre to do that. And is there really though any other right to market genre that's wait, he's grunting.
No,
okay, hold on, I gotta distance myself.
I'm gonna write an erotica novel. Yeah, I gotta get on that right now.
I'm heaving.
Where that came
we
from.
call that no. Okay, so that real quick as a side note. I was trying to sleep one night and I got one of those programs where you have like those things where you like sleep to like either people reading or like sounds and something. And I'm sitting there and all of a sudden this voice comes on. Hold on.
Ray was having a bedtime story read to him.
I swear to God, I'm sitting there, I put it in my ear, I turn it on, all of a sudden I get,
and now I read to you the classic Rumpelstiltskin.
and it was just like, oh, what the hell is that? And it was just the worst voice. Oh, it was so bad. Yeah, so that's where that came from. Yeah, imagine that voice reading Rumpelstiltskin as a bedtime story, I wanted to go take a shower after listening to the intro, okay? Oh, yeah, that was fun. But yeah, that's where that voice came from.
That is indeed.
So now let's go back. Hold on a second, Glace. I want you to explain something. Are you in the middle on this? Are you agnostic, or do you have a preference one way or the other? Are you going to judge? And which way are you judging?
I won't write to market. So if that's what you're asking, that's not something.
Well, I won't write erotica either, but I don't begrudge people who do.
Well, here's the thing, right? Let's take that. Erotica happens to be the current little micro trend that's going on. It's it does well. But when you write to the immediate market, there doesn't seem to be, like, I have all of this data that I gathered today. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of long-term success in writing for, as Ray said, a quick buck, a chance at a quick buck. Let's put it that way. There doesn't
not very many people writing 50 Shades of Grey. That's an anomaly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it was the first of its kind. That's the thing. It's kind of, everybody's doing that thing now because God, I hate using those yes. A lot of people
because it's
are
a
writing.
Microcosm of success.
Right, that's it. Well, and it's
let's
something a little bit more fine-tuned. You have different types of erotica that
right.
that people are sort of delving into. And there's those little groups of consumers who consume a lot of
Yeah,
Right.
there are. There are women who
lot.
sit at home who are the predominant readers who buy these books either online or in stores. So
They're the
there is a
predominant
market and
writers
they do
too. While
sell.
we're on the subject,
Do what?
they
I
write
mean,
more.
they
They're
devour them.
yeah, they do. And they also write them more than we do.
Yes.
So, Glaze, let me ask you something. Did you ever read or have access to a copy of 50 Shades?
No, I
You've
never
seen
did.
it?
I'm probably one of the only people on the planet who both didn't read it and didn't watch.
I didn't see it or read it. Yeah, I didn't either. So
Yeah, I
I,
saw.
I
I
didn't
know it
see
exists.
it, but I
I
read
can
a
tell you
little
the
of it.
history of it. Yeah.
It's as though the story itself, the author craft, if you will, was deliberately set aside. It was
Well, from what I
it's
understand,
made
50 Shades of Grey. No, 50 Shades of Grey was originally written as Twilight fanfic, and apparently it
Mhm.
developed its own following, and that's where it came from. So that's
Yeah.
the initial. It was fanfic,
No,
which
exactly.
is great. I think that's awesome.
It's
She
awesome,
didn't
but
write it to make money. Yeah, she wrote it because she was interested in the Twilight and wanted to extend the story in a different direction, which makes I get that. That was not somebody who was writing to market.
no,
Now,
exactly.
this
That's my
goes for
point. That was it was an anomaly in a lot of different ways, and writing to market
right.
wasn't one of them. But Glace is correct about one thing, though. The current popularity of at least marginally acceptable erotica, which is in 2020, no holds barred, really.
Now, and this brings up another point. This is not just an erotica, but I have heard fantasy and science fiction authors and thriller authors who are having interviews talking about their books, and somebody asks something like, "Well, you have this great series that you're working on. Are you going to write another book about it this year?" And their response is, "Well, if it looks like it's going to sell, I will."
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you kind of look at that and go, okay, dude, I get it. You get to a point where you have to make money because you have to pay the bills. But let's face it, is that what you're tailoring your writing around to, is about what's going to sell at that moment? So it's a balance. I mean, at any point, once you get into that situation, we all have to struggle with, is what we're writing going to sell? Is what we're writing what people want to read? Or are we just writing because we want to write it and everybody else be damned? But at some point, you got to pay the bills.
You do have to pay the bills, but the question that Glace hit on earlier was that balance you just mentioned. Is there any reason to presume, and I say no, that someone who is writing to market, someone who says unapologetically, look, I'm not doing this shit for free. I want some money for this. This is hard work.
Right.
It's solitary work. It takes forever, and I want a paycheck. I don't blame them. We all do. But does that mean that if they are writing to market, whether it's erotica or not, or swashbuckler bullshit tales, if the writing is good, is it in spite of the effort, or does it have nothing to do with it? In my estimation, you write to the degree you're capable. If you're doing it deliberately and you're writing to market, or if you're doing it as an expression of an art form, the voice doesn't change that much. And so what I'm saying is, a good writer is a good writer, whether they're doing it deliberately, cranking out some schlock because they want a paycheck, or whether they really want, you know what I mean? To me, it's like, it's almost irrelevant whether they do write to market or not. That'll piss off Glacia, but I'm saying if you're a good writer, if you're an engaging writer, the material that you're making draws people in. It doesn't matter if you're going for a buck or if you're going for style. It is good or it ain't. Period.
I
right.
agree with that.
Okay.
That doesn't piss me off at all. I mean, I think that you're either capable or you're not. I mean, because even capable writers can write shit. And then past that, it becomes that decision of how am I writing? What is my motivator and what is my goal and why? I'm curious if there's actually if there's actually much success to this, because Ray touched on something. I love the fact that there's a different thing that we can talk about there in terms of the writing a series, will it sell, that sort of thing, that's that motivator, if I can get somebody hooked in, then
It's deliberate. It's analytical and it's deliberate. They're making a judgment based solely on commercial success.
Well, and I mean, if you go into something writing a series because you have a story that's that big, and there are plenty of those out there, all three of us have one, if not in Ray's case too. And that's one thing. We kind of got into this on the episode about series versus standalone novels. That's one thing. The intent there is to write a series. It's different. It makes me kind of go, when you have an author that makes like one really fantastic book, and then the clamor is more, and instead of branching out and writing another book, the answer is, well, even though that was just supposed to be one book, I'll write more like that because that's safe. And that is something that's potentially crippling. If you're an author and you fall into that trap of, well, I wrote this one really great book that was supposed to end here, but now everybody wants more from me. And so I know that this is safe, so I'm going to write it again, essentially.
And that's not just the author's fault. I can tell you that I have talked to more than one author, traditional published ones specifically, who have agents and book companies who wrote a novel that was good. They wanted to go left, but they were asked to recreate that novel formula in a different format. So they did. And that just, all they were doing was rewriting their first novel in a different place. And I can't give the name of the author of the novel, or I'll just give it away. So
don't.
The point being is that happens.
Yeah, and it's just as disingenuous as it can possibly be, and you know what the motivation is, and it ain't fine literature. It's a dollar sign, end of story. It always was. But that's the evil part. So there's nothing new there. Down here in foolish author land, we write for a lot of different reasons. Up there in publishing land, they don't have but one reason, and that's making a buck. Period.
Of course they do. That's their whole purpose in life.
Exactly.
Well,
I understand that.
We want to make a buck too, though. I mean, that's the thing.
Well, sure we do.
Because we three have made the decision thus far, who's to say that wouldn't change in the future. We three have made the decision thus far that we write what we want to write for the sake of writing, and that's it. And we do not go vampire erotica or whodunits or serial killer crime fic is the thing, and then so that's what we're gonna do because it's hot right now. We write what we want.
But we can get something more personal on that level. Let's talk about, I'll even use me as an example. So I put out Sleep. Sleep does phenomenal. And all of a sudden, it's a great book. People are clamoring for the next one. Now I have a choice. I can go back to my first series and I can write a book on it, which is okay, which is good. But if Sleep is doing phenomenal, is that going to alter my opinion as to what I'm going to write that next one? Am I going to write the follow-up immediately to Sleep? Because if all these people are reading it, well, hell, I want to make sure that I get a book out really quick so that they continue that momentum. There is a possibility that even your own sales are going to judge how you put your books out. Come on, let's face it.
That's different. Yeah, because that's like a different way of thinking about that. That's like writing to the grand market versus writing to fan demand. That's really the difference there.
Oh, there's a good nuance.
Are we not? Are we not also trying to please our fans at the same time we're trying to both appease our artistic side, pay the bills, and please our fans? How do we make those decisions without having
or worse, how do you sever the link that ties them all together when you have somebody say, geez, I cannot wait for book 3. I want to see what happens to character so-and-so. And that is a fan perspective. Oh, I can't wait for this to tell me when it's coming out because I want to see what happens to them. We are stupid if we don't react to that. But if we're writing a series, and all of us are, then that is something that you have, not only do you have to expect, you probably ought to applaud. It isn't pandering. You have readers who are engaged and have internalized these characters. They want to see what happens to them. That's different than
Yeah.
Well, I looked at my analytics, and this is selling better in this city than it is in that city. I'm going to incorporate that city more. That to me is commercialized pandering out the ass. Reacting to something
Right.
that is a little bit closer to the art form, that doesn't bother me very much.
Well,
I want to know what happens to them. I want to see if Lark turns into a seven-headed lesbian and starts ending the world. I want to be there. I want to see that. That's different. That's not just give us another book because I don't have anything better to do. That's not the same thing.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of pressure in that. I know that Ray is experiencing this right now with his first series as he's working on his second. I am as well. I just put out book 3 of my series, but don't tell anybody who reads my books. I'm not working on the 4th one right now. I have done the deep dive into another one that's unrelated. And damn the torpedoes.
Yep. So that's the
Basically
artist
damn
side
the
of you.
torpedoes. Well, I mean,
it is. It really is. You're not giving in that easy.
I will
we
come
as
back.
authors, hold on.
You know, but-
well, we as authors get paid more than just money. I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of different currency. There is fans, fan adulation, monetary, critical success, author success, financial success. There's a lot of different ways that an author can get paid. So it's not just, we're not just
That's a
talking
good
about
point.
dollars and cents here.
No.
You know, in all honesty, if you write a series that you've got, 5, 6 fans that are lukewarm, you write another series that's all of a sudden got 100,000 fans, where the hell do you think you're going to spend your time?
Sure.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I don't see that as a problem. To me, that's a and
yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's a
Right.
but that is another way that an author gets paid more than just financial.
Heck
So
yeah.
those out
Yeah.
there listening are thinking, oh, well, I'm not worried about dollars and cents. There is something you are worried about when you publish your book. There is some metric that you're judging yourself of how good you are or how bad you're doing, whether that be fans, responses, reviews, money, something. Currency is not just dollars and cents.
And as with anything that has some sort of like a pseudo financial metaphor to it, there is an opportunity cost for every decision that you make.
Right.
And like in my case, I am making the calculated risk of putting off book 4 in my first series until the end of 2020 and making people wait until then, instead of being like, oh, the next one will be out in March of 2020. I'm going, it's going to be more like October. And in the meantime, I am going to put out this one little standalone novel because that's what I want to do. We can still see you. Nice try.
Tried to sneak away for a second.
He weaseled for a second. He had big nasty fang teeth.
I was weaseling. Here we are. I was weaseling. Dude, I was such a ninja. Shut up. I was a ninja. That was my ninja performance.
Ninja Ray.
I was flipping off the walls and I was sneaking through.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Total.
Let me share with you some of the stuff that I found.
Oh, here we go. We got stats.
Statistics. We actually got good stats. She went rabbit holing serious, so these are good. You got to listen.
Yeah.
She was railing about him earlier. I want to hear this.
Oh God, I know.
It's like I don't have anything organized, so it's going to be interesting. So, we kind of started this whole thing with, the whole writing to market is erotica, blah, 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 blah. The funny thing is that apart from the anecdotal, observational, immediate evidence that I have, there really isn't a whole heck of a lot to support the fact that erotica as a book does particularly well, actually. I think that a lot of books of that nature, that sort of pop fic type stuff, doesn't have to be erotica, it could be anything. I think you get a little bit of success with a lot of those books. Let's put it that way. A lot of those books do, you make a little bit of money on them. But as a genre,
about quantity, yeah.
It is a bit about quantity, yeah. It's also a lot about the fact that the people who read those books tend to, the books tend to be kind of shorter, but they consume them. They buy lots of them. They don't always read them. That's the other interesting thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of book hoarding when it comes to like the further away you get from literature, the more likely a reader is to book hoard, to go around and buy every 99-cent book that they can get their hands on in a given genre, and then they just sort of hang on to them in their Kindle.
Wait a minute. How do you know they're not reading them?
I will put the citations in the link in the recording, because
Okay.
I have them on here. So when I started looking around, that's the first thing that I found, was that, you know, you can make a little bit of money, but you're never going to get huge unless, you know, it's 50 Shades of Grey. It's an isolated thing. It was a phenomenon.
Right.
This is not the rule in the industry, for sure. So I went and found a list of like the best-selling books of all time. And if I had thought about it, I probably would have been able to identify that I would have been able to predict that this was the case. So there's a list of books that have each sold over 1 million copies, right? There's 11 of them. That's it. There's only 11
books
these.
that sold over 1 million copies.
Yes.
Wow.
10 of them are fiction, 1 is nonfiction.
That's depressing.
That's also surprising. Wow.
0 of them were written in this century. 0.
Ah, yes, I could see that.
There has not been, despite, you know, book hype and everything that has gone on
Popularity,
in the last
right.
20 years, there has not been a huge bestseller like that. You know, there were a few in the sort of like latish 20th century, but not in the 21st century. I mean,
Right.
as a sidebar, dude, looking at all these lists, you are reminded immediately that the 20th century was the heyday of literature. Like,
Yes.
I will argue that absolutely to my last breath. I don't care what anybody says about the 19th century. No, don't care. 20th century was the heyday of literature, far and away. So if you count, would you allow me to count Grimm's fairy tales as fantasy genre?
Seen this on lists
Yes.
before and thought,
I would.
are you kidding?
But I bet that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that's a huge one.
8 out of the 11
Damn.
Are
8
Grimm's?
are fantasy.
8 are fantasy. Wow. Okay.
I know, right?
Last century fantasy, so classics, right? Which ones? Come on,
Them
give us
are
names.
fantasy. I don't have that in my list, but Tolkien's on there twice.
Oh, so they're classics.
Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
like the first Harry Potter's on there, but that was in '96. So, you know, we're still talking like the last part of the 20th century. That was
Yeah,
the
well,
latest
come
one.
on. Harry Potter was huge.
Right, but like none of the other ones were on there. You know, I mean, all of J.K. Rowling's other books were in like the next bracket down, the 50 to 100
Right.
million per book, you know, thing. But when you get into that next level down, again, the 50 to 100 million books, there's still not very many on that list. There's only
Wait a minute. 52 to 100 million.
50 million to 100
To
million
100 million. So 100 million
copies
books.
sold of an individual book. Yeah, there's only
Jeez.
27 more of those, and very, very few of them were written in the 21st century. 5 of them, actually. Almost all of them, again, 20th century. And a third of them are more fantasy.
So fantasy sells big. Got it.
Fantasy sells big, right? I was not.
My life sucks. I need to go somewhere else and live a fantastical moment and hallelujah.
I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's really. I think that fantasy has a tendency to become like a cult phenomenon. I think that's really what it is. Because
Well, wait, now, be fair.
Right.
Be fair. Fantasy
I
in
mean that in a
fantasy in the 1920s was pre-television. It was pre-internet. It was pre-lots and lots of stuff. Flights of fancy back then were delivered by fantasy books. Sci-fi too.
Yeah, though sci-fi is
That
not
makes
really
sense.
well represented on these lists. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what do you have? You have Jules Verne, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and everybody else.
Of
who's
course
hadn't
you
come
have
along
Jules
yet,
Verne.
right? So that stuff, though, fantasy especially, was also, it appealed to people.
I'm going to agree
who
with
were coming-
Tanya. I bet Orson Welles is on that list. I don't know about Tennessee Ernie Ford, though.
No,
Tennessee Ernie Ford. What the hell are you talking about?
I don't remember.
Tennessee
who
Williams.
pulled the
Ernie
list
Ford,
up.
man. Orson Welles, I bet. Oh yeah, I bet he made that list.
I'm gonna sort of push back against Rob's "I hate my life and I need to escape."
It's a Wells book. Tennessee Ernie Ford is
No,
a
no,
Wells
no,
book.
not
They
not
hate
your,
Ford
not
one.
your. No, it wasn't escapism. It was a medium by which people in the pre-electronic entertainment era took the Saturday Evening Post shorts to a different place. It took them to places in a part of the century when the future was at least recognizable. Technology had changed a lot. Think about this from a historical perspective. You couldn't have found a better place for fantasy than HMS Pinafore. This stuff starts prior to the century, by the way, but it did way more than entertain. It inspired the shit out of a lot of people who did amazing things after the fact. That wasn't escapism. It was almost like, I'm trying to find an analog to it. It was looking forward and smiling and going, man, I can't wait to, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be great? It wasn't escapism. I may have misspoke, but that was what science fiction ended up being to Ray and I in the 1950s.
Right. Now, real quick before we jump out, those lists you got, can we post links on the website of the group or something? We have a bunch of people who do want to see them, and we can do that. We will do that. Yes.
Let me go to the next thing, right? We were just talking about series. So I have top-selling series on here as well.
Ooh.
You want to talk about confusing, man. Confusing.
Confusing. Okay.
Okay. So like there are 31 series that have collectively between all of their volumes sold over 100 million copies. Right?
Okay.
I'm sure you can all guess who is at the top there.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's going to be.
I can do that.
There is some stuff on there that's very surprising.
Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. But
It ain't Game of Thrones, though, is it?
he's on there, actually.
Is he?
Yeah, I bet he is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that
That's
got
the-
real big.
I wonder if that's retro, because there weren't a hell of a lot of people reading it until the movie or until the
It
series.
doesn't matter.
No,
It does not matter. It is up. It is copy sold. It doesn't matter if
True enough.
that's one of the reasons that Tolkien is so high on those lists. Because
Does
people
Philip
Yeah,
Dick
exactly.
make the list at all? I'd love to see Philip K. Dick make those lists.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Seriously? Oh, dude.
No, he
No,
doesn't.
he's,
If he
he's,
did, I didn't
he's a
read down
pantheon
far.
to us. The average person
come
doesn't know
on,
who Philip
he
Dick
was-
is.
Brilliant.
Yeah, he was.
He is
Well, if
brilliant.
they've seen Man in the High Castle, Minority Report, if they've
Yeah.
seen Total Recall, any of those, then
Yep.
they
The
knew
guy is
Philip
a
K. Dick
genius,
is.
no doubt.
Oh, the
He
guy's
was-
They
an
don't know him
absolute
by name.
political sci-fi genius. Electric Dreams.
He was
10-year-old
also
kid can tell you who J.K. Rowling is. Find me one kid who can tell you who Philip K. Dick was. The guy
Well,
was not
he
known.
was, he was also mad though, and let's be honest.
Oh,
had
yeah, he
his-
was raving.
Yeah.
Had his
Yeah.
movies
All right,
not made
Ninja
such
Sneak
great,
Away. Watch this.
Goodbye Ninja. Had his books not made such fantastic movies, I think a lot of us probably wouldn't even be able to.
Yeah, that's a good point. And some of the best books have been done this one before, made into dreadful movies, particularly in fantasy and sci-fi.
Not so with Philip K. Dick, though. Some of his were
No.
dreadful movies, but some of the best sci-fi movies that have been made have been
Absolutely.
based off of Philip K. Dick novels and
Let's-
stories. So
You can, oh man, I couldn't agree more. Blade Runner comes to mind. So that's Electric Sheep and turned into a movie.
Mhm.
And it was
Man in the High Castle.
Man in the High Castle,
yeah.
which endures as a series right now.
Yep, exactly. He's still trying
he
to
was-
get back through. We can see you, man.
Yeah, you're
You're not-
weird. He's like a cockroach now, is what he's doing. He's doing cockroach stuff.
Okay, so
Hey, I was
the
doing
series-
ninja things.
All right, ninja thing.
the
Go ahead.
series. All right, so of the 31, this is interesting because I just gave you how rare it is to have books that were written in the 21st century be considered bestsellers. Now, when we get to series, of the 31 series that have sold over 1 million copies, 7 of them were written in the 21st century. So if you're
Really?
talking about writing to market, market is not a genre. Market is, to go kind of touch back on what Ray was saying,
Now,
series.
we
No,
don't know how many of those are persistent worlds versus just series, right?
these are not just books by the same author. These are within a world. They are either episodic or they're,
Well,
Continuation
because that's right.
of
We're
an
talking
original
about
thing.
series for fantasy. There are series for fantasy, and then there's what we call persistent worlds. Worlds where all these different stories take place, which can be by the same author or can be spun off. I
And
mean, that happens
these
too.
were all series. Yeah, like
Okay.
they weren't
This is
just
a
like it wasn't.
Successive stories.
Yeah, it wasn't like R.A. Salvatore and like, you know, a million different stories, you know, that all happen to happen in the
Right.
same world.
Okay.
These are like akin to Harry Potter and the Hunger Games and 50 Shades,
Right.
you know, series.
Those are some great. This is why YA is hot right now, because those couple of things turned into. That's what brought YA to the forefront, really.
Yep.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah,
you know,
Twilight and Hunger Games.
yeah, that whole YA thing.
What was the other one? It started with a D. I forget. Anyway, doesn't matter. So of these 7 21st century series, 8 if you count Harry Potter, which I kind of put in parentheses because it started in the 20th and is still going on now. So we'll call it 8.
Right. Okay.
These are the genres. There is no market for series. Okay, ready? Listen to this. So we have Harry Potter, which we're going to call fantasy. There's one more, fantasy. Thriller, children's books, erotica, supernatural and paranormal, and then psych thrillers. It's all over the board. All over the mother loving board. And that's just the
Whereas
stuff
it
that was
wasn't
written
before.
in the last 20 years. That's just the stuff that's been written in the last 20 years. You know, and it's just as diverse when you go back into the 20th century.
I
So,
could see Divergent. Yeah.
Divergent, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Monica.
Wow.
So there, yeah, there's, it's hard to identify what market is, right? Because are we talking about what's popular right now? Are we talking about having something that's longstanding, like that has sequential success as in a series? Or are you talking about
Right.
market share? Because that's a third thing, is market share. Because
Ah,
it's
yep, that's true.
So from a practical perspective, somebody who deliberately wants to write to market, someone who's saying, I don't care, you can judge me all you want, I'm going for a dollar bill.
Mhm.
It's pretty daunting expecting them, unless they're really, their finger is on the pulse of this from beginning to end, expecting someone to be able to forecast and know whether they're in the right place at the right time for a particular genre and capitalize on it. Ray said earlier,
Right.
that lady didn't write 50 Shades because she wanted to go bust in with an outrageous, everybody's going to read this erotic. She was a wacko who did this on a lark for a completely different
She was
reason,
a
and it
wacko.
turned into a giant, right?
Right.
I could do that.
That's not the same thing at all. And so does that suggest that this is hit or miss, and it's a fool's errand to think that you can forecast this to any
That's
degree
right.
of accuracy?
That's right. Yeah. See, like for me, if I were trading in the stock market, I wouldn't be going off of micro indicators. I would be going
No.
off of macro indicators. And
Yep.
so
Right.
therefore, I don't write to the moment. I don't write the vampire. I don't write the erotica. I don't write the serial killer or, you know, true crime spinoffs, depending on what decade you're talking about. You know, it's been all of those. So
But that's not because you're being market savvy. It's because you don't want to do it. There's a difference.
I could write any of that stuff, but no, I wouldn't.
No doubt,
Not
but
my
you don't want
motivation.
to.
No, my
exactly.
motivation is not to figure out what the micro trend is. Now, caveat. Looking at market share, that's hard to ignore. That is hard to ignore. Would knowing that 40% of the books that are purchased are romance influence me to write romance? No. But I look at that and go,
You wouldn't mind getting a piece of that.
it's hard
Well, come
It
on.
is hard to ignore.
And
Yeah.
so that's where we end up with this sliding scale of influence, you know, and you're sort of riding along in here going, I'm gonna let the market tell me when to buy and sell if we're gonna continue using the stock market
Right.
analogy. Or I'm gonna do something, stick with it, and then maybe the market will come to me. That's really the question.
So do you think if someone is writing to market, even though we established earlier that a good writer is a good writer and a shit writer is a shit writer, it doesn't matter which direction they go in. But if you were doing that for that purpose, perhaps we should have said that it diminishes in some way. If your soul and your heart and your everything aren't in this, if your goal is to follow a trend, to write something to that, it's reasonable to conclude you're not putting all that you could into writing that story. It is diminished, whether you like it or not.
I have a feeling that there are probably some career writers out there who would disagree with that. I don't know. I wish I had one like on speed dial who I could be like, hey, you're told what to write. How does that affect you? You know, I mean, that's a little bit different than writing, you know, to market. So, you know, you're writing.
Yeah, I've talked
publisher.
to enough of them to know what that is. Yeah, that's per publisher, per agent. I've talked to enough people that where they are under that gun. They are told at that point, this is the next book we want to see from you.
I'm sorry, but I don't think for one
about that.
Exactly. I don't think for a minute that doesn't affect the way they write that story.
No, it does. Because if they're not, I mean, come on, it affects the way we all write. If we're not excited about the story, the plot, and what we're doing, it affects our writing. We could write
absolutely
a constructed book.
Yeah.
Those authors,
as good as our others? No.
Yeah, they can disagree all they want, and they can also kiss my ass. Human nature is what it is. We're humans. We do this for purposes that are, as Ray said, payment comes in a lot of different forms. And I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to go right to that level, but don't tell me that that doesn't have something to do with if they had written this of their own accord and they were not under those pressures. There wasn't an agent or a publisher tapping their toes saying, you really need to stick with this because we make lots of money. There's no way that product is going to come out the same. No way.
And this brings up the other point. Some of us who write indie and show some success and exposure get approached either at conferences or via email from publishers going, oh, you should bring your whole library over to me. And you're like, well, what the hell am I going to do that for? Because I'm the one managing it. It's obviously doing really well right now. So what do you possibly have that I need? Man, you know, and there have been more than one case where that has happened and that the answer is not given because they can't answer that question. You know, they'll come out with, oh, more advertising, more this, or street cred, or, you know, whatever. But the honest point being is once you get to a point, if you're making it, you're making it. You know, fans like books. They don't care who publishes them half the time.
Times changed, and the indies have a lot more horsepower and availability than they ever did before. It was 50 years ago. There was no such thing as an indie. Well, those days are over.
What is our point? As writers, we develop a following. We develop a group of people who like our books, who buy them, and that's what we do. Our main goal is to grow that following by giving people what they want to read. That's honestly what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's really about getting people's attention. You get people's attention, and then you write. And the people who see, that's the thing. I think that's where the temptation to write to market comes from.
Yeah, is to build that following quickly.
You're like, what are people paying attention to? I'm going to write that because people are paying attention to that. Because ultimately, that's the bottom line for all of us, is to try and get people to pay attention to what the hell we're doing so that then they will continue to do so. Because that's how readers are. Readers tend to be maybe not necessarily loyal, sometimes very much so loyal. I have a lot of very loyal fans who will keep coming back over and over and over again for everything that I write. I confidently, I say, both within and outside of the series that I'm currently writing.
I hope, because there's a lot of books that will be explored this year that will be outside of my current genre. So I hope they keep coming back for more. We'll see. Yeah. They may look at it and go, "What the hell are you doing? Get back to your damn sci-fi series. Stop screwing around."
Where's the fourth Shadow War Chronicles?
Where's the God? Don't even start that because we've already heard that enough times. I know. Yeah.
I have a feeling that there's going to be people doing the whole on my door, you know.
Oh yeah, they're knocking on my email, my door, my messenger. Where is it?
But you know, I mean that we have gotten their attention. Now it becomes
Yes.
that, how do we keep it? Because there are some rabid
Yeah.
super fans out there. I have
There
a
are.
bunch who are amazing.
Yep.
But then, I wonder about, the other people who like, what I do, but, I wonder how much I will hold their attention. And so that becomes that sort of, it goes along with writer's anxiety, right? You decide to do something different and you're like, are they going to pay attention? Are they going to keep track of what I'm doing? Or are they going to go, oh, that's not the thing that I liked? So
Are they going to take that left with me? We're going down that road, got a bunch of fans. I go left. Are they going to turn left? Or are they going to go, no, we're going to wait right here we're going to go straight.
Exactly. Are they like, no, I'll wait till you come back.
Exactly.
And
go get that out of your system and then come back to what you like. Yeah.
But then when you do come back, do you still have their attention? That's the question.
That is true.
That's where that
it's hit or miss. You can have one who cannot get enough of your stuff this year, and for no reason other than a change in their life, they move to something else, and maybe they don't come back. That's a really interesting point you make. They react to a book based on, first, whether or not, if they pick it up raw, it's the first book that you've written, and they attach to it. That's good. You like that. If they're coming back for the sequel and the third and the fourth book, or even ancillary books that you write, you've developed a voice that they attach to. You have the basis of a following. But if they leave it, if they go somewhere else, I'm not sure that it's blameworthy for whatever you're writing. It may be at some point inevitable. You're going to get somewhere where I've read books from people that I really respected and thought, this is shit. And I may not come back to this author again.
Right.
And when I did, I don't even know whether they came back to that spot Blaise was talking about before. It is fickle as hell, and it's in the moment. It's in that book. I don't know how long you can keep somebody coming back simply because they started out that way. I don't think it's fair to expect them to.
Yeah, that's
right.
interesting.
This is true.
I think that's kind of the risk that you run when you are in any art or entertainment industry, right?
Yep.
It doesn't
You
matter.
can't get away from that. Yep, that's a
Painting,
reality that we have to deal with.
Making music, writing books.
Hold on. I mean, how many times have musicians heard, well, I like your early stuff? I mean, that's just, come on, that tends to be like, right? And as authors, hearing that is like, oh crap, it means my new stuff sucks,
Yeah.
But we as authors want to stretch our creative muscles. I have a lot of interests that are all over the place, and I like to explore some of those in my writing. And by doing that, it makes me happy. Hopefully it makes the fan happy too. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
That sounds precisely like going back to the beginning of the discussion when Blaise brought this up. That sounds very much like all three of us. When you think about what we write and how we do it, for the reasons, it kind of becomes obvious after a while. I think we're in that group. Like we're in that cadre of authors that, yes, I admit I would like to have some financial success here, and I don't apologize for it. But by the same token, I cannot do cookie cutter books. I don't have to. I don't have an agent. My publisher doesn't demand that of me. I do what I want. Is there an anxiety level? Sure there is. There is for all of us. You write something, you go, geez, I hope they don't kick me in the nuts for this. But I think we're not the type of writer that would overtly, predominantly entertain writing to market. I don't think it's us.
True.
No, not us. But yeah, I mean, that begs the question, just because we make the decision not to, does that necessarily make that the right decision? There ultimately
see, that is also
isn't
true.
One, I guess, right? We gamble. They gamble. We just make different gambles.
Every time there's a book, there's a gamble. Go in both directions.
Well, I mean, that's what we do as authors. When we write a book, we're making an informed gamble. We're taking the fact that here we have a fan base, an existing fan base that we are every day growing, that we are now taking in a different direction. Whether that fan base comes or does not for your next book depends. I mean, yeah, there's the safe writing. I could do this because this is where my fan base is at. So I can write another one of these because that's where my fan base is at. Or I can go over here because this is what I want to do, because this interests me right now, this story. Are those fans going to jump? Some of them will, some of them won't, you know, and that's the way that goes. I mean, honestly, if you look at my year is going to be not even genre based: political, science fiction, dystopian thriller, science fiction epic, fantasy epic, persistent world, werewolf novel, and science fiction. That's just this year. I mean, so are they going to come with me? No, they're going to get whiplash probably. But you know what? Some of them will. Some of them will.
Some of them will have gotten attached to you, to your voice, to the way you do certain things, and hopefully that will get them in the door. Now, unfortunately, there are some people who are like, you know, I like sci-fi, I do not like MST.
Right.
I like romance, I do not like, you know, fantasy, whatever the case may be. And so, you know, I mean, this goes back to the whole genre jumping thing that we've talked about on a million different occasions. You know, in my case, I mean, mine are, you know, suspense thrillers with a psychic twist. I'm about to write something that is very much modern fantasy. And so
cool.
Expecting people to come along for that is a leap. You know,
I don't know about the well, wait a minute. Not
fantasy,
expecting them to come along. It sounds pejorative. Anticipating that they will. I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
You think?
No, I can anticipate they will. Yeah.
I hope they will. Gosh, I hope they do. But I guess that's really kind of what I'm trying to say is I have no expectation that they will. You know, I'm doing the whole prepare for the worst, hope for the
even
best.
Privately, you don't think that they're going to come. You can hope for it, but that doesn't mean that you're expecting or that you feel that they are obligated. It's not the same thing.
I think that in my case and in the case of a lot of other authors who have managed to do something like I have, in that, you know, people have gotten attached to my characters and the way they're written. And so I'm hoping that my readership will attribute that to me. I'm hoping that they will extend some good faith my way, that they're like, I wrote these characters and I like them, so let's try her next batch.
But
you're correct. We can.
Your writer's style and your voice is what they were following. They just learned about your characters through that voice. They liked the voice, so they wouldn't have kept reading. And if they don't show up, then they're traitorous rats and tell them to die.
No, that's not true.
Make them walk the plank.
You start reading or never talk to me again, you traitorous rat. That's what you tell them.
There you go. See, that's right.
I'll do PR for you. Don't worry about
it. Well, here's the risk you have. Your fans, a lot of them will probably come over, probably check out the book. The question is, will they like it? Is it something they're going to enjoy the same as the other books you've written?
There's the risk.
And I think there's the risk, right?
Yep.
I don't like this as much as this is a very different genre, a very different book than what I've written before. So there is a risk. There will be fans that read it that go, it's different. You know, it's not bad. It's just, it's very epic and a lot's happening and it's just, you know, more serious or more this or more that, you know.
I feel like a lot of times when, like, if you want to talk about like reviews that are left and stuff like that, I think if you have someone who is like a very enthusiastic consumer of your work, and then you change the way Rob, you did, the way Ray is about to, the way I am about to, I think that even the most rabid consumer of your work, if you go, come with me to this other genre, you run the risk of being like, okay, I like you, and then getting the review that is one star down from whatever it would have been because the review opens with, not my preferred genre.
Yeah, right. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I've had interpretations of my work, so like I get that. You know, I mean, people have read mine just because it was like, oh, she wrote a book, and so they read it, and that's how the review starts. You know, it's not my preferred genre, but I'm like, okay, then why?
Yeah, then don't read it.
Right.
You disloyal swine, go die. Okay.
Knock it off.
All right, all
Stop
right.
being
Yeah, we'll.
fans.
Well,
Yeah,
this is
that's
good.
good.
This was
No, this has
we
been a
avoided rat
very
holes this
awesome
time.
topic.
Did you notice that? We
No.
didn't go down one rat hole, not once.
I
I'm
went
very
down like
Hey,
17
this is
rabbit holes.
yeah, we
No,
did get
your
a few rabbit
statistics
holes,
weren't
but
rat holes. We
honestly,
knew they were
come on, this was a really good topic, and a lot of people enjoyed. I know I did. I enjoyed it because
Mhm.
you know one of the things with writing dystopian fantasy is coming across as how well it's going to be received. There is a lot of fantasy out there, so how do you decide if yours is going to be any good with all the rest of them out there? You don't. You just write it and hope it is. You know,
Good deal.
honestly.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Glaze
Thank you,
comes up with a
everybody, for
great
joining us.
topic.
I think that was a